Ubisoft, a name once synonymous with innovation and blockbuster franchises, but unfortunately today it's a shell of its former self. From endless delays to their underwhelming releases and now manipulated metrics and tanking financials, the writing is on the wall. In this video, we're going to go a little bit deep into Ubisoft's overall slow collapse, and from their lies around Assassin's Creed Shadows to the recent Tencent deal and their desperate attempts to try to spin engagement numbers as an overall success. This is the real state of Ubisoft, and no matter what they try to say, it's not good. So special shout out to all of you 87,700 of you subscribed to the channel right now, and there are nearly 48% of you who are not subscribed. Consider hitting that subscribe button today. I would greatly appreciate it. So let's start off with the obvious topic, the one that everybody has been talking about for a little while now. Assassin's Creed Shadows, Ubisoft's flagship title that has gotten backlash through and through for months now. Not because it's too ambitious, because most Assassin's Creed games are, for example, but because it's the same Ubisoft formula over and over and over again. But what's more concerning is how Ubisoft is trying to frame the game to be a success. They're not talking about their pre-order numbers anymore because the game is obviously out. They're definitely not talking about units sold because they never do. Or they're not talking about the overall demand that the game had. All they're talking about the entire time is player engagement. That is literally it. They're talking about how often the game was engaged with, and you don't even know if it has to be with sales or if it was Ubisoft Plus. You have no idea, and that's the entire point. They don't want you to know. They want you to be in the dark. They don't want to be transparent with you. The only people they have to be transparent with is with their investors, but apparently even during the earnings call that happened recently, Assassin's Creed Shadows was still damn near never mentioned. All they said about Assassin's Creed Shadows was that community sentiment was strong. That is it. It is so damn pathetic that they only said that community sentiment was strong because they are trying to avoid any and all conversation around Assassin's Creed Shadows, because they know what their marketing was, they know what they told everybody, and they know what the public story is, and they're trying to maintain that narrative. I want to be very clear. If at any point you mention that players engage is how you are going to judge the success of your video game, let it be known it's a failure. The only video games that are ever allowed to use players engaged as a metric are free-to-play video games, because there is no price of entry. So obviously the only thing that really matters is how many people are playing it, because then you can kind of judge off the fact of, okay, if you got 10 million people playing the game, chances are a decent amount of them are being monetized through some microtransactions of some kind. So players engage as a metric that free-to-play games use. Not full-price video games, not AAA video games. Those video games, the only thing that matters is the amount of success it has by units sold. That is it. You can talk about subscriptions, but I'm telling you right now, the only people that ever subscribe to Ubisoft Plus to play Assassin's Creed Shadows for cheap are streamers. They're the only ones who probably did that. Very few people are out there subscribe to Ubisoft Plus in order to get all their games day one. I highly doubt that. Ubisoft video games go on sale damn near immediately. You have video games that go on sale within 30 days of release. It's insane. Why would anybody pay full price for a Ubisoft video game unless they are a streamer or some form of reviewer or a content creator? There's no reason. Before I started personally reviewing video games, I would never spend full price on a Ubisoft game. I bought most of my Ubisoft games when they were 75% plus off. There's no reason for me to ever spend more than that on a Ubisoft game. Their value is just not there. But for some people there is, especially when it comes to Assassin's Creed. A lot of people love Assassin's Creed, obviously. It's a long-standing franchise with a name that no doubt still has some power to it, but ultimately it just wasn't enough. And see, that's the beautiful thing about Assassin's Creed Shadows. When the game was first announced, we said it many times over that I don't think the game is going to be a failure at all. I think the game is going to sell just enough for it to deem itself worthy of an Assassin's Creed name. But the problem is that the company was struggling for a long time. Ubisoft was struggling for a long time, and a lot of the shills for Ubisoft would try to convince you that the company was perfectly fine. It's not. A lot of the shills out there would convince you that Star Wars Outlaws was a major success because they were eating the same PR nonsense that Ubisoft was putting out about that game. If you guys remember, during the pre-initial release, or pre-release I should say, of Star Wars Outlaws, what they ended up doing was they tried to do the same narrative. Community sentiment is strong. Pre-orders are strong. It's the same thing they say every single time about every single video game before they ever release it. It's the same nonsense, and the shills eat it up because they're either paid to or because they want access, and that's why they're doing it. It's really quite pathetic. these games overall have been flop after flop after flop. And the sad thing is that the Prince of Persia game that flopped for them, a lot of people that played it said it was actually a decent platformer. But the thing is, it doesn't matter, right? It just doesn't overall matter. Ubisoft comes with a certain idea in people's minds. When they think of a Ubisoft game, they imagine certain things. So what does this all mean when it comes to Assassin's Creed Shadows overall? I mean, honestly, people were clicking on the trailer. Obviously, people were watching the trailer, got heavily disliked. People were talking about it, both positive and negatively, but that's not a success metric. That's ultimately just smoke and mirrors. Engagement doesn't equal sales. You can have all of these subscriptions in the world that you want for Ubisoft Plus, but that is only 1/5 or 1/6 of a full retail sale. You need 5 to 6 to even 7 players on a Ubisoft Plus platform to even equal one retail sale. It really is kind of sad. But of course, Ubisoft is going to try to spin it any way they can because they know Shadows, flopped for the most part. They definitely didn't make their money back, nowhere near. And on top of that, Valhalla is used as a comparison metric every time they get a chance. And that game did really well over the course of time. Obviously, it took a couple of years for it to get to where it's at now, but that's how Ubisoft games do. Ubisoft games don't come out the gate swinging. What ends up happening is when they're discounted 75-80% off, people buy them in bundles during holiday sales. And then before you know it, eventually you'll crawl your way to, 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15 million sales. But most of those sales are at 80% off. So you end up not making that much money anyway, even though the number looks good and the sales metric number looks good for people. Ubisoft even got so desperate during their whole nonsense that they started bragging about how many females are selecting the female protagonists in older Assassin's Creed games, as if that's supposedly somehow a financial milestone. It's so ridiculous. So let's talk about the numbers overall. So Ubisoft's latest earning call kind of pulled back the curtain on their real financial state, and it's bad. Despite bragging online about player counts and live service activity, Ubisoft posted significant losses this past fiscal year. Revenue is down majorly. Operating income is in fact in the red, and most notably, their one-strong franchises are now being heavily discounted just months after launch. Look at Star Wars Outlaws, for example. Look at Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones took years in development. Over 10 years of development. Massive amounts of money was spent on Skull and Bones. A massive marketing spend was spent on Skull and Bones, and yet a live service pirate game that was meant to rival Sea of Thieves flopped completely, critically and commercially. Even the CEO had to walk back expectations in the earnings call. Internally, morale is very low. Developers are leaving, and the public just isn't buying into the supposed vision anymore. People are leaking things left and right from within Ubisoft. If you guys pay attention to all of the leaks that have been happening over the last year or so, a lot of it has come from Ubisoft. People clearly are unhappy working inside of Ubisoft, and they feel like they have no voice. So they are leaking things and reaching out to YouTubers, journalists, or whoever, trying desperately to get their voice out there, because internally they are completely stifled by a company that wants to create this environment of toxic positivity and continue pushing that all the way to the end of their company. It really is quite sad. And the CEO doesn't give a crap. You guys think the Guillemot family actually cares about any of this? The only thing the Guillemot family actually cares about is maintaining control of the company. If you guys notice in the recent deal with Tencent, when they created a brand new subsidiary, one of the things you'll realize is that Ubisoft and essentially the Guillemot family ends up having full control over the subsidiary in every way, publicly anyway. From a monetary standpoint, obviously Tencent invested a massive amount of money into the company. Over $1 billion was put back into Ubisoft in order for them to have a 25% stake in the new subsidiary. But Ubisoft still contains all control over it because that's what the Guillemot family ultimately really wants. They don't want to give up control. They want to keep control while keeping the money coming their way. And that's exactly what they ended up doing. Now, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, this Tencent deal, a lot of people tried to look at it as some form of strategic partnership between Ubisoft and Tencent, but let's be real. It was a bailout, okay? Ubisoft needed capital. Ubisoft needed money, and Tencent was willing to offer it for the highest price compared to their competitors. This was less about the synergy and more about just overall survival. Without Tencent, Ubisoft will be cooked by now. Tencent now owns a significant portion of not only the original Ubisoft company, but also the brand new subsidiary of the company itself. And of course, just to make it very clear, Ubisoft didn't sell because they wanted to. They sold because they had to. This isn't the move of a thriving company. It's a sign of a company losing autonomy. Ubisoft is slowly becoming another Western gaming company falling under Eastern influence, not because of choice, but because of desperation. Tencent is very good at this. Tencent is known for doing this. They will slowly but surely take over a company by investing in it more and more until they get majority position, and then they do what they gotta do once they realize that the company is at its weakest point. Tencent is the one that is going to thrive here, and they are the ones who are going to benefit here. And even though it may not look like that in the beginning, it's only a matter of time before this happens. I'm telling you, Tencent will be the one that wins out in this overall conversation between these two companies. So let's go over some of the numbers from the earnings call that is really going to bring to light what is going on with Ubisoft as a company. We have an article here from investing.com that says Ubisoft Entertainment reported lower than expected earnings for fiscal year of 24 to 25 as net bookings declined 20.5% year over year, reflecting weaker partnerships and intense industry competition, and issued a disappointing outlook for the fiscal year of 25 to 26. That is right, you heard me correct. Ubisoft has announced that they have a net bookings decrease of over 20%. That is disgusting. This is why their stock is plummeting and falling as we speak. As you're watching this video right now, the stock was under $10 or 10 euro, whatever. It is unbelievable how fast this company is tanking. The video game publisher posted an adjusted loss per share of 56 cents euro, wider than analyst estimates of 47 cents euro loss. But the company's share plummeted more than 20% in Paris trading on Thursday, which is today, the time of filming this video. Net bookings for the full year came in at just 1.85 billion euro, slightly below the company's target and down from 2.32 billion euro in the previous year. Sales fell 17.5% to 1.90 billion euro, though marginally beating expectations of 1.89 billion euro. Ubisoft reported an operating loss of 82.6 million euro compared to a profit of 313.6 million euro a year earlier. That is insanity. These numbers should make any investor immediately scared to stay invested in Ubisoft. Why would anybody want to stay invested in this company knowing that it's being ran by absolute idiots? And then the hilarious thing is this brand new subsidiary that took away Ubisoft's all prime video games is now going to be operated by the same idiots that have ruined this initial company. This is why I know Tencent is going to be the beneficiary of all of this, because they're going to be able to take over Ubisoft's favorite IPs for relatively cheap when the time is right. They're just biding their time. They're waiting for the right moment, and that right moment is going to show its face very soon. So here's where the cope comes into play, because people are going to say, well, what about Assassin's Creed Shadows? That was a massive success, right? It had 3 billion players or something like that engaged, right? 3 billion players engaged. All the shills out there were saying that this game was amazing. It was a massive success. Although, keep in mind, some of them, in case you haven't noticed, are now on Twitter talking about how much the game actually sucked. So they waited until the time was right where everybody stopped talking about Assassin's Creed. They first shilled for it, and now they're trying to backtrack. Yeah, you don't get to backtrack on that. But the CEO highlighted some positive, stating that Assassin's Creed Shadows reaffirmed the power of the Assassin's Creed brand with a highly favorable community response from longtime fans and players alike. And that is it. That is all he says about Assassin's Creed Shadows. Literally nothing. No sales data. Nothing. Zero. This company is a joke. They don't want to tell you anything. They want to keep you in the dark as often and as much as they possibly can. They only try to lie to him. Like, I hope you guys understand that this lie that they're saying right now about community sentiment being strong is the same exact thing that they said before the game came out. When they were being asked about pre-orders, they said pre-orders are looking good. They're almost as good as Odyssey, and community sentiment is really strong from new players and old-time players alike. They said the same exact thing before the game came out. Now they're saying the same exact thing months after the game came out, but they have no numbers to back it up. Absolutely zero to back this statement up. And everybody knows that community sentiment is not strong on Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is exactly why they're saying this, because they need to make it seem as if, oh, it's just a small amount of people online that are angry at this game. That's all it is. It's just a bunch of chuds online that are angry at this game. No, it's very clear that the game didn't do nowhere near as good as it should have done, and they're trying to gaslight people into thinking that it did. Now, one of the other things that Ubisoft mentioned during this earnings call is the fact that they revealed a reduction plan. They have to reduce costs. Why? Because they're not a thriving company. Failing company like Ubisoft has to reduce costs overall, and big time. So they announced that they have a cost reduction plan which aims to reduce over $110 million of costs over the next 2 years. So what does that mean? You know exactly what that means, ladies and gentlemen. What's the biggest cost for any company by far? Payroll. You guys know that layoffs are coming, and here's the beautiful thing about this. They are trying to convince people that Ubisoft is perfectly fine out there. And we have been saying for the longest time that layoffs are going to come. And layoffs did come. They closed a bunch of Ubisoft studios. And now what's going to happen, as like they need to save $110 million, they're absolutely going to do massive layoffs all across their company. Ubisoft has a ridiculous amount of people working for them. It's almost 20,000 people. And that's after the layoffs that have happened recently. So what's going to end up happening is they're going to have to cut the bloat, and it's only a matter of time. And I told people this was going to happen with the Tencent deal, and they tried to gaslight me and tell me that, oh no, when Tencent invested money in Ubisoft, that means Ubisoft is saved. They have all the money in the world now to do whatever they want. There's going to be no layoffs. Oh no, there is. There's going to be a lot of layoffs. And now that you know that they're trying to cut 110 million of costs, most of that is going to be payroll. I can guarantee that. So what does this mean overall for Ubisoft, right? What does this ultimately mean? I mean, at the end of the day, Ubisoft was known for some of the best games out there. Ubisoft was known for the Ezio trilogy. Ubisoft was known for Far Cry 3, one of the best FPS storytelling games. Ubisoft was known for Watch Dogs, which, even though the game was heavily flawed, was considered ambitious and unique at the time. But then eventually what ended up happening was Ubisoft became the Ubisoft that nobody likes. Repetition Ubisoft, right? Every game started to look the same. Tower climbing, bloated maps, endless icons, monetization schemes disguised as progression. When players called them out, Ubisoft basically doubled down. Titles like Ghost Recon Breakpoint, The Division 2, Watch Dogs Legion were commercial disappointments. Even Rainbow Six Extraction, a spin-off of their once great PvP shooter, felt like a cash grab. Each release seemed like less a labor of love and more like an algorithm's idea of a video game. So what's next for Ubisoft? Well, I mean, they're going to have more live service nonsense, I'm sure. More sequels that nobody asked for, more franchises driven into the ground. And if their financial trajectory continues, they're going to have layoffs. They're going to have studio closures, or you never know. At some point in the future, pretty soon, they're probably going to have a full acquisition, most likely by Tencent. They've promised a revamp of the Assassin's Creed franchise. They've got upcoming mobile partnerships. They still talk about Beyond Good and Evil 2 like it's real, and nobody believes them anymore. But Ubisoft is chasing trends instead of creating them. And in an industry this competitive, that's a death sentence not just for Ubisoft, but for any studio that tries to do that. Players are no longer fooled by cinematic trailers or padded engagement stats. They want meaningful content, polished games, and innovation. Ubisoft for now is offering literally none of those. So even though Ubisoft used to be a titan, now it's basically a cautionary tale. Lies spun all around and corporate band-aids might work for a while, but gamers remember, and we see the cracks. And until Ubisoft changes, they'll continue their downward spiral, one engagement metric at a time. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy this video, consider leaving a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. And leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Special shout out to the Bigot Army members. Thank you guys so much for hitting that join button. And if you are not a member and you enjoy what I do here, consider hitting that join button. I would greatly appreciate it. But until the next time, I will see you guys on the next video. Hypnotic out.